Hello, hello. So we are back and we are going to go over a couple concepts that are just foundational for the Sizzle Kids Course 1 here in Pillar 1. We call this Outsmart Big Food, Fast Food, and Junk Food. And while I have some students that are 6 and some that are 16, I want to go over for the younger crew what big food is. Most of my older students will understand this concept already, but I just want everyone to have a good concept of what big food is and what it means when we refer to big food. So basically, there are 10 to 15 big companies in the world that own all the packaged food brands that you see in the grocery store. We will go over in the next lessons in this course where food comes from, meaning from plants, from animals, from the earth, from growing, all the way through the processing to packaged foods that you would see from these companies. So when we're talking about big food, we're talking about these 10 to 15 companies that take all of the staple products like just corn that comes out of the ground and potatoes that come out of the ground, rice that comes out of the ground, and turns them into the packaged foods that you see at the grocery store. So this graphic shows you a few of the companies that are considered in the big food group, and we have Nestle here is a big one. They own Cheerios, Hot Pockets, Gerber baby food, all kinds of different things. You can take a look here and zoom in and see some of the brands that they own. Um, Remember that these are always changing because these companies buy and sell these brands to each other all the time. And that's a whole nother story of big business and how that all works. If you look here, we have, Pepsi here owns all the brands you see here: Cheetos, Tostitos, Fritos, Naked Juice, which is considered a really healthy juice most of the time, is owned by Pepsi. So just keep that in mind, that you don't always know exactly where all your brands are coming from unless you understand the concept of big food. Another company here in the middle is called Unilever. That's not here on this graphic, but it is another one of the big food companies. They own Skippy peanut butter and Bertolli pasta, and that's an interesting one. Bertolli, in their advertising, they tell us about how they, source their tomatoes for their sauces straight from Italy with Italian chefs, and that may be true. I don't know specifically, but they are owned by this huge company, Unilever, that has mass production facilities to produce these brands. So, anyways, the whole idea of big food, and when we're talking about big food, is just to remind you to look beyond the brand and look towards who owns it and where they might be sourcing their ingredients from. That will give you a good idea of how much processing your ingredients are going through. Another one is Kraft Heinz. This company is also not here on this graphic, but it's another really big one. They own Jello, Honey Maid, Oreo, Lunchables, Capri Suns, all of this type of thing. So these big companies own all of these different brands, and these graphics will change. So don't hold me to any one of these. These companies buy and sell brands all the time. And that's just another part of business in the food industry. And we'll go over that in more depth later as well. But for right now, I just want you to understand that a handful of companies own most of the brands that you see in the grocery store. So the further you get from a whole food that comes right out of the ground to a packaged food that you buy in the grocery store, there's going to be a lot of processing involved in that process, and that's happening from these big companies. Now, these big food companies, they're not terrible. They're not bad in any way. They provide a really good service to the world by mass producing food so that more people can eat, and there's more food available and there's more variety. So that's a positive to these big food companies, but there's a negative as well, that in that processing a lot of nutrients have to be stripped out or are stripped out. And what, in my opinion, is even worse is that a lot of times there's chemicals added and additives and preservatives and fillers and all these kinds of things added that you don't know exactly what they are a lot of the times or how much of them are in your food. So you don't know how much you're consuming. And some of them are quite toxic and are not good for you. Some are just fine and some are not great. So, anyways, we'll be referring to big food here and there, but I want you to have an idea of what it is. And when we, lovingly say we're going to outsmart big food, fast food, and junk food, we're going to outsmart them by knowing what the brands are that we're eating and what is in them and what the ingredients are. In coming lessons, we'll be looking at ingredient lists and how to read labels and all this kind of stuff. So you're going to be so smart about all of this stuff, and you're going to be able to outsmart not just big food, but fast food and junk food as well, which we're going to go over in the next lesson. So we'll see you there. Oh, one more thing. I want you to understand that big food they're just companies like anybody else. And they exist to not only mass produce food to feed the millions and millions of people in the world, but also to make money. So they will respond to you by what you buy. If you require healthier foods or if you require foods without chemicals, they will pivot to provide those foods for you. It just depends on what you'll buy. So keep that in mind when you're spending your money on food, that you will get the quality of food that you demand with your dollars. All right, we'll see you in the next lesson.